Oh, it's super dark in
You
here.
know, earlier this week I posted this poll on YouTube and I said, which one is harder? Is it harder to be a person who struggles with an addiction, or is it harder to be like to love someone who struggles with an addiction? And overall, it came out that it was most people said it was harder to be the person who loves someone with an addiction, but the numbers weren't too far off. Um, I think we could all agree, though, that no matter which side, either side, it's totally terrible and horrible place to be. Either side of that coin, you don't want to be on either side. And Serenity has volunteered to come and share some about her story because she's been on all the sides of the coin that there can possibly be on. And it's rare that you find someone that has all those different perspectives. And I think that's why your story is just so valuable to us, because you're able to look at it from the different angles.
Yeah.
So thank you for coming on to share with us. Can you tell us a little bit just about the situation that you're in now and maybe some of the history that kind of led here?
Okay, so I've struggled with addiction my whole life. I had an eating disorder in high school, and that is now considered an addiction, which makes a lot of sense to me, um,
Mm-hmm.
because I've been in counseling. I've gone to 12-step programs. I've gone to 12-step programs for marijuana, eating addiction, gone to Al-Anon for, managing family members with addiction. So all of those things have been impactful for me. Uh, so I currently live in a situation with somebody who has an active alcohol addiction, and I've come to understand that how you identify, that's really your thing. Like, that person needs to come to their own conclusion about how their addiction and behavior are affecting themselves and also the people around them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and also because I've been trying to stop smoking marijuana every day. Um, if he says something to me about that, I'm like, oh, okay, now I find out that's irritating.
What
Okay,
goes through
now
your
I
mind,
understand why
Serenity?
you're irritated.
If he brings that up, give us the inside scoop. What goes through your mind? Because it's a natural reflex, right? Like, even though
Yes.
you're sitting here saying, "I know it's from," I know it, you're like even know and aware and you're acknowledging it. It
And
still
I'm
gets some
working on it.
buttons,
Yeah.
doesn't it?
It's
Yeah.
yeah. So what goes on inside my head was, oh, that's annoying. That's my problem. Unless it's like impacting you and want to tell me how it's impacting you. So that helped me to understand that when I bring up somebody else's issue, they have that same response, like, hey, who are you telling me what to do? That's kind of what goes through my head is, that's my thing. You can't tell me
Right.
what to do. So that helped me, uh, between that and the invisible intervention information, that helped me to realize that is not my place to bring that up. And I've been in counseling off and on, and my therapist said, um, really, don't ever mention that. If something happens, talk about the incident
Right. The
and how you're
problematic
impacted,
behavior. Right.
because you don't need to talk about why the problematic behavior is occurring.
Let
It's
him
just
connect that dot because he knows.
exactly. So I would say, this happened, and then I would mention, whether he was intoxicated or not, and that would just shut the conversation down.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand why. I
Right.
don't even need to mention that. If I just talk about something that's occurred that I'm concerned about or that I feel impacted by, there is no need for me to connect that dot. That's right. That's not useful.
Right.
So that
Because
has helped
yeah.
the level of conflict in our relationship, because I don't need to say that, and me
Right.
learning
Because
how to stay out of that bad guy role, that
mhm.
has improved our relationship as
Yeah.
predicted.
'Cause it hits this automatic defensiveness button. Even if you know, like, you did something wrong, no matter what that is, or that there's a problem, if somebody, like, calls you out on it, immediately, your thoughts, I mean, sometimes immediately out of your mouth it's gonna come, just depends on your personality, but for sure, immediately, your thoughts are gonna be like, you defending yourself, "You don't know me," like, all this stuff, like, if it's me All this, my head might start shaking and everything. I get
I
all
mean,
kinds of
I'm doing
symptoms.
it. I mean, I'm actively, working on my own stuff, and I still don't like it being brought up. Like, and he's
Right.
aware that I'm working on that. And I was apprehensive about even sharing that because I'm not trying to pressure him, but I have in the past,
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm working on this, I'd get sober with you, forget
Right.
it, but still that was pressure coming from me.
Right.
So even seeking my own addiction help, I was apprehensive because I don't want that to be perceived as I am pressuring you to do something about it. I'm just trying to take care of myself. And as my counselor also told me, it doesn't make a lot of sense that I'm pressuring you, but I have my own addiction going on.
Right.
So I want you to do that, but I'm going to do this over here. That doesn't make
Right.
any sense either.
It doesn't. And I think you make a really good point, Serenity, when you say you have to really even think about, if you should or how you should, if you're going to bring up what you're doing, because it can, if you don't do it right, come across as in, like you're saying, hint, hint, like, oh, I'm doing it, like you're sending like this sort of like sneaky little jab in there. Right.
Exactly.
And sometimes people that's what they're trying to do and it's just not nice. Right.
Yeah, and so
Mhm.
in this situation, I did say it's bothering me. Like,
Yeah.
I do not want to feel like this is something that I feel like I'm over relying on it as a crutch to,
Yeah.
manage my stress and anxiety.
Mhm.
And it's not helpful for my anxiety. My therapist explained, or my doctor explained, that you get that anxiety rebound
Rebound.
when you're, and
Definitely.
I don't need
Mhm.
that. I don't need that.
Right. Yeah.
So I addressed it in that way. Like, I'm doing this because I am very bothered by my own behavior, and I don't want to keep doing this because of the way it makes me feel about myself.
Yeah. I
So,
think that's a
but
perfect way to do it. And a lot of times it has to do with your intention, because sometimes people will, like maybe they drink with their spouse, so they stop drinking as a way of telling their spouse they need to stop drinking. They'll say, "Well, I haven't had a drink in however long or whatever," but it's really a jab. But what the way you're saying it is very authentic. It's like what you're saying is, "Hey, I know I'm not perfect either. I have crutches and coping skills too, and I'm going to work on it." And that kind of humility and vulnerability is actually very helpful. But it has to come from a sincere, authentic place. It cannot be like a sneaky little hint, jab, like
exactly.
criticism. Right.
Yeah. And I moved out for about 6 months, about 8 years ago, uh, because of the drinking.
Hmm.
Um, and I didn't say that. I didn't say that was why. But when we reconciled, I did say that. Like, part of the reason I left was because of the drinking, because
Hmm.
I thought, that would be like a wake up call.
Right.
And when I moved back in, he said, well, maybe I need to do something about that. Well, that was a long time ago. And then we never had another discussion about that until about a year
Right.
ago. And he said, I never said that.
Right.
All right. Because then I was putting him on the spot. You
Yeah.
said this like a long time ago, and, what have you done about it?
That was one of
So,
your like the thing I call like the moment of clarity, or your window is open. And it's so strange because it's like you don't know when they're gonna happen. And they do sometimes just happen randomly, and then you're like, what do I do? What if this? So I always say you have to have like some things in your back pocket, not literally, but like
yeah.
you have to have some plans. Like, if I get that window, what am I gonna say? Because
Yes,
sometimes you don't
exactly.
feel it coming. I have so many clients, it's like it's on and on and on. They're bargaining, they're bargaining, they're bargaining, and I'm just like going, and then they're like, "Okay, I'm ready to do something. What should I do?" And I'm like, like I
Exactly.
don't know.
I had no idea what his reaction would be at that time, but it
Mhm.
just came right from my heart, being honest, that this is one of the reasons that I moved out. And when he said that, I was like, wow, that
Right.
he'd never said that before. So when I brought it up, it came up like in the last year or so, and he said, I never said that. I said, you know what? The fact that you said that is burned into my brain. I've never forgotten that
Right.
moment.
Like you can see it happening probably.
Yeah,
Like,
but as
yeah.
you really, I didn't know anything about how to respond to that,
Right.
other than I felt hopeful, but there was no plan. And
Right.
And when he says he's cutting back, I don't know how to address that. Like, are you not? I can see that he's trying. I can definitely see that, but I don't say it unless it comes up in the context of something.
Gotcha. So looking back on that moment, which was way back when he said maybe I should do something about that. Looking back on that now, since you've had time to think about it, like, what do you wish you would have said? If you wish you would have said anything, like, if you could replay that moment, what would happen different?
At this point, with the knowledge that I have now, I would say, what would that look like? Like, what are you thinking would be effective for you, or something along those lines, rather than just letting it drop. I think it is important to have a response.
Yes, and I like that, because if you don't know what to do, ask a genuine question. You're not going to go wrong. Right? Like, you're not going to go wrong with that. Like, being curious. True. People like to talk, if they don't feel defensive, they do, if they don't feel like you're judging them. You could have even said, wow, really? You would do that? That would mean so much to me. You could have just reinforced it, like, how, really? Like, oh my gosh, that would mean the world. Like, that would help so much. Like, you could just.
So much.
I call that like watering the seed, right? That's what I call it. It's like a little seed. You get like the land, so it's like put some water on it, and then we get the miracle grow out, and we grow it. So, right.
And we have had, like, we were meeting once a week outside the house to like, sort of State of the Union sort of a thing.
Yeah, that's actually a good thing. Yeah.
Initially, that was one of the topics, and one day when we were out to lunch, he very genuinely, like, said that he really he really would cut back, and he would not be intoxicated when I came home from work, because he's retired and I'm still working. And that was also very powerful and like heartfelt. And I said, that would be very helpful. Because I said, I don't know what's going to happen every day when I come home. I don't know what I'm going to encounter. And that's very stressful. So when he responded in that way, that was a very powerful exchange. But again, I didn't have anywhere to go with that.
Right.
So, yeah.
And, I mean, the good thing is you didn't, above anything else, the most important thing is don't do anything to like make it bad. And you didn't, right? Because you could have said, yeah, you should have done that 2 years ago. You could have said something super sassy, or said, that's what I've been saying. You could have done something like that, which would have blown it up.
Sometimes I'm sassy. Sometimes I am sassy. If we have a conflict at night, I might bring up the drinking, and then I'm so mad at myself the next day. And I've said to him several times, like, the next day, like, I fell off the wagon, basically, with keeping myself in my own lane, which is what you learn in Al-Anon too, is the only person you can control is this one right here. Stay focused on that. That's very important. So when I apologize, I think that's important. I take responsibility for the shitty thing that I said. And I've said to him several times now, I apologize for bringing that up, because that's not in my lane. I should not be the person bringing that up. And that was not okay that I said that to you, that I made it about the drinking. That's not okay.
What does he say when you do that? How does he respond to that?
Well, it upsets him. Of course, it makes him mad that I'm bringing that up, because, oh, you mean when I take responsibility
when you apologize, like the next day or whatever? Yeah.
He will say, thank you, or I appreciate that, or, and so I've continued to focus on staying in my own lane. So sometimes when I apologize, I want him to take responsibility for his part of the conflict, and he often doesn't do that. Especially if I say, well, what about what you did, or what about what you said, or that kind of negates
your turn. Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, wait, I can't control other people. That's right. I can't make somebody apologize. I can't make them be in any different space than where they are. I can't make somebody more ready to get help. That's not my role. And that has really decreased my stress understanding that. But I spent a lot of time reminding myself, oh, That's not my thing.
Right.
Mm,
And it's okay. You don't. The thing of it is you don't have to do it perfectly every time. I've been doing this 20 years. I mess it up all the time, and I know I do it because you can see on their face you push too hard, or
exactly. Yep.
you said it with the tone, or like, and you can, as long as you have overall, you keep your relationship with that person good, you can fix it, right? And it's not
Yeah.
even that hard. And sometimes it's even growing because, like you said, if you show humility, it opens their humility up. And he may or may not say, well, I shouldn't have done this, but he's probably thinking it. And the thing of it is, and I just know this from working with people for addictions for so long, even the ones that are like, I like it, I'm never going to stop drinking, they just like brag and they own it. Underneath that surface, there is something else going on. There is some thought. I mean, think about all the problems that we've all had. We know where our flaws are. We know,
Absolutely.
and we don't like to talk about it, and we don't like for it to be brought up, and we get defensive, but it's brewing under there. And that's why those little breakthrough moments of clarity, when that window opens, when they do say something, so it feels like it's out of nowhere, but it's really not. By the time someone says something like that out loud, they have been thinking about it for a very long time, and they're just not bringing it up because they're scared that if they do, you'll push too hard, and then they get scared and close the
Yeah.
window back.
Yep. So all those reminders from watching your videos, the invisible intervention, counseling, Al-Anon, all of those, sort of converge to say, stay focused on yourself, say how you feel, make observations about the incident, you know,
Right.
share how you were impacted by it, but stay out of that bad guy role. I mean, I think the way you say it is very powerful, that it's not my job to be shaking my finger at somebody. It's just not, and it's not effective with kids. And I'm an educator. That's not an effective strategy for anybody. But
Right.
it's hard to stay in that headspace when I
It's
get stressed out.
totally against instincts, because what it is, this is someone you love and you care about. Not only is it affecting you, but you care that it's affecting them, and you want them to see it faster. And so what you want to do is hurry it. That's when I mess it up as a counselor. When I try to hurry it, that's how, when I try to hurry it, that's when I mess it up every time. Like, it's like, stay, it's like simmer. But even if you think about, like, with your own, like, journey with the marijuana and wanting to cut back, if somebody came at you and started telling you all the reasons why you shouldn't do it, you probably will agree with a lot of them, but immediately you're going to start thinking, yeah, but I need it because, yeah, but it's really not hurting anybody. Yeah, but it's the only thing that helps me sleep. Yeah, but, it's a reflex. And so anytime, it's
Exactly.
like you're causing that person's brain to think and sometimes say the opposite of what you want them to think and say. So it's like you don't want to hit that tripwire, because it's natural. And when we think about
Exactly.
ourselves, we know it's true, right?
Yep.
Like, all of our
I mean,
excuses start coming. I mean, yeah, it's just it's normal.
yep, exactly.
Mhm.
So, and also, uh, I wish that I had had more skills and more understanding when my brother was ill with addiction, and my brother passed away from drinking, and he was under tremendous pressure all the time from my mom and my dad. Like, there's still, we're still hopeful. There's still, hope as long as he's still alive. But by the last 2 years that he was living, he died at 54, and he's my big brother, and I'm 60. So that's a real bummer. I outlived him. I wasn't supposed to do that. Um, I mean, I probably would have outlived him, but not now.
Right,
That
right.
should have been a long time ago.
Mhm.
But I wish that I had been able to respond to his um, addiction in a different way sooner. I spent a lot
Mhm.
of time with him the last year just accepting that what was happening. And I would visit him and I would say, "Have you been drinking today?" And he would lie. And I could see the liquor bottle on the kitchen counter reflected in the window from the seat I was sitting in. And I said, "Dave, I know you're drinking."
Yeah.
And he would say, and I said, "Why do you lie to me? You know that I know." And he said, "Because I'm ashamed."
Mhm.
And that, just knowing that that was pushing his shame button, even though he knew that I knew, and I was accepting the fact that he was going to die.
Mhm.
I I said that it's a choice that you're making. I wish you weren't making that choice, but I support you. You know, it's a human being. And I think that's part of staying in your own lane, that when I get hyper focused on somebody else's behavior, it gets very difficult for me to stay in my own lane. And that's not supportive of that other person. Kind of lost my train of thought there.
Well, I think, what you're saying, I mean, those are, I mean, and it sounds to me like you responded to your brother with kindness, even those pushes that you wish you hadn't done, they're pretty gentle pushes comparatively, because most of the time, and I'm sure your parents probably pushed even harder. And it comes from a place of love, and it comes from a place of fear.
Yes, fear. And yep, we don't make good decisions when we're doing them from a fear space.
Right.
And I think I know where I was going with that other thing. My counselor was saying to me that, darn it, lost my train of thought again. Oh, to disengage from another person when they're actively in that addictive state. There's no word that's going to come out of my mouth that's going to make it better. And when I can avoid those kinds of conflicts, that doesn't do more damage to the relationship, first of all, because there's no point in shaming the other person. And to remember that my husband's a good person, and 99% of him is a wonderful person, and focusing on that one issue sort of makes me forget this is a human being with feelings. And when I say hurtful things, it's not okay. And I'm not saying I'm not aware of that, but in the moment when I'm focused on that component of what is happening, that is not helpful.
Right.
I don't want to be hurtful to other people. I don't want to hurt somebody that's struggling with an addiction. That's not getting us anywhere.
Right.
And so staying out of that, not engaging when the person is in that state, that has been very helpful and powerful. And still sometimes, I mess up with that too. I'm not perfect, and it's hard for me not to beat up on myself when we have a negative interaction, but I will apologize, for the things that I say. And that is very powerful. And that is received in a positive way that I am now able to take responsibility for. I helped create that conflict with what I said or the way I responded to something. And that and the invisible intervention, trying to stay out of the bad girl role and taking responsibility when I get in that role, has been a very positive change. And, I think the other thing that's so important is something that you said in one of your videos, is that why do you, it's always like, why do I have to be the one to change? But the fact of the matter is that when I change, that changes the dynamics with other people, because it can't not change because I'm responding differently.
Right.
So I feel more hopeful now than I have, in a while, because I can.
Do you feel like he's responding to you differently? Like, can he notice these changes? Does it make a difference?
He doesn't say anything about it, but we have less conflict for sure. And I don't feel so negatively about the situation because I'm not like focusing on that when there's a conflict. Or I had to realize how hyper focused I was on another person and not on myself. Like, again, stay in your own lane. Well, that's very difficult. I have anxiety and PTSD. Put that out there. And so I can very easily get amped up into a very anxious state. And then when I say negative things, that increases my anxiety. Like, I wish I hadn't said that. So now I have another thing to feel bad about.
Right.
And again, that's not helpful to the other person, or especially to me, it's not helpful because now I have what I considered a bad behavior. And also now I feel bad about it. And the other person is hurt.
It's like layers of ickiness, right? I'm so glad you said that, because you're so spot on. Not only are these techniques helpful for the other person, and it is the most effective way to go about this for the other person to help them change, but for ourselves, because even if they don't change, you feel better as a human being. You're not filled with so much resentment. You're not filled with a bunch of guilt about a bunch of terrible things you said or did. You feel okay in yourself. So regardless, it's going to be a win for you. It's probably going to be a win for both. But even if that, if he doesn't turn, you will still walk away from the situation better than you would have before.
Yep. I had an appointment with Kim, and I spent the first, chunk of time talking about him.
Uh-huh.
And she then redirected to what, but how am I managing my own? And I think that's very powerful, to focus on self and having a good life, regardless. Like that, this situation and this person's behavior should not be all the focus that I have, like it's ruining my life, because actually I do have a lot of positive things. We have daughters, grandchildren. We all, and my parents, we all live within a 10-mile radius of each other. I'm a race walker, so I'm very active doing that. So there are a lot of positive things in my life. But for a while, I was so focused on, what he was doing, that I completely my life, because I was just obsessed. That's the word I would use. I was obsessed.
Right. It is. It's it's like obsessively constant, nonstop. And one of the ways I think to kind of connect with some empathy for the other person is, like, I feel like when you're the family member and you're going through this, even though like you're trying really hard, you're trying not to say mean things, but occasionally it's going to slip out and you have a little relapse. And I think it's kind of like a good thing, because it reminds you of, like, it's hard for me to stop this behavior. I'm not chemically dependent on it.
Exactly.
I'm not going to go and withdraw if I don't say it. But even me, even when I'm trying to say it, kind of brings us to that humility of place of sort of trying to understand what they're dealing with.
Yeah. And recently you had a video and you were talking about the tremendous amount of energy that they are expending worrying about the substance, or, a situation where they're going to have to go where that's not available. And I mean, that is a lot of cognitive load on a person.
Yes.
When I was able to really think of the way you were framing, and I realized that is a lot of pressure to be concerned about all of those components. And that you have people around you that are stressed by what you're doing. And I mean, I can't imagine how suffocating that might feel sometimes, when, like, there's a family event and of course we're present. But other people are aware of the situation. So just so much pressure all the time. So I don't need to be adding to that pressure by saying, why aren't you doing this, or why aren't you doing that, or, I'm not working on my own stuff. So, and I think something I shared with you earlier that I haven't shared here is that my therapist pointed out that, so you're asking this person to, address their addiction, but you're still using every day. How does that make sense? I was like, oh, that's a good point. I mean, I'm actively seeking help to deal with my own addictive habit. But yet, still focusing over there while I'm focusing on my own stuff. And it's like, oh, okay.
Right.
That's not helpful. Again, so many things that I've done have not been helpful, and have probably helped, keep it going. Not intentionally thinking I'm helping, or but making comments that aren't helpful, and getting in his space, and making negative none of that has been helpful. The moments where we've had these moments of positivity and clarity around his own situation have been when we were just, it's in a calm space. It's not when we're having a conflict and then it's brought up.
That's he's like productive. You're saying you this, you that, and then all of a sudden he's like, "You're right." That's not gonna You're right.
But that can be. So I think that's part of the value of taking responsibility for my own negative comments or my own bad behavior when we have a conflict, or realizing after the fact that I was triggered and then I, reacted, that has led to some of our moments where we have a really genuine exchange about,
Right.
the impact. And he has said, I'm working on that, or I'm going to work on that, or,
Okay.
and I've been
So that's
supportive
that
in those months.
change talk. Because earlier you're saying you weren't sure if you were getting any, but you've told me several things just in our discussion that says, no, you're getting change talk and change behavior. So like, so let's talk about that just for a
That's true.
minute,
Yeah,
so that
that's a good point.
because you've worked so hard to get that and you're getting it. So let's talk about, what to do with it. What do you normally like? What do you do when you get that? What works? What doesn't work? Are there any holes? Do you need some help figuring out?
I think I don't really know like what I would do if he were to say, I think I should maybe go see a therapist or whatever.
Okay.
I don't know what to say to that. Um, I feel stuck in that moment. Like I appreciate what's being said, but I don't know how to respond to it in a way that would be supportive.
Uh-huh. So what
Yeah.
you say when you get, because that's an opening for I'm ready to take a step. And sometimes they need you to help hold their hand on that step. So, or to, like just it's just a little tiny like, pull along, not a push or shove or anything mean. So in a situation like that, you could say something like, you know what? I've actually, I've been in therapy for a long time, and it's kind of nice to have your own sounding board. It's super helpful for me. Get to talk all about yourself. It's great. They listen to you. Who doesn't want that? That's what I'd say. And I'd say, actually,
Exactly.
I think um, I've heard of a couple people that are really good. You want me to call and see if they have an opening? If you just leave it hanging, or you could say, hey, or depending on your husband, I mean, best you could even say, hey, I know a couple people. I'm gonna call. I'm gonna see if they have openings, and then I'll report back and let you know, because then that gives you an avenue to come back to it and say, so and so has an opening, at 3 o'clock on Tuesday. I asked them to go ahead and hold it. Is that going to work? And then they may just say yes, right? If they do, great. And if they say no, then you call them and you cancel it or whatever. But like,
Exactly.
move the dial, because they're literally asking you to move the dial because they really want it to be moved, but they're scared to move it themselves. And if you wait, that moment will go away by the end of the day, by the next day for sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So you need to he's handing you the football. You gotta pick it up. Be real cool about it. Like be cool. Don't
I
act too
like the
excited about
idea,
it,
like
but
it's a
run with
drive-by.
it. In
Like,
fact, I already have the playbook laid out in your head, know exactly what your plays are gonna be. But
I,
look like
I
it's
like that.
smooth.
I like what you said about, I called a few places or whatever, and just put that out there like a drive-by, basically putting that out there, and then I'm going to go about my business because there's nothing I'm going to say. I laid it out there. You're going to think about it. But if I sit here and like, go after that and try to
Mhm.
engage in a big conversation,
Mhm.
then that shuts the conversation down because I'm doing all the talking, and then it's like pressure rather than just responding to what he said, and then walking away and then not reacting. If he says no, he says no. If he says yes, he says yes, and then
Yeah.
he can follow up on that.
If you say something like, and this isn't a terrible thing to say, this is just sort of a little psychological trick, but if you say, um, hey, do you want to see a counselor? They might say no. If you give like multiple choice, I like to give multiple choice. If you say, do you think you would respond better to like a woman counselor or a man counselor? Because immediately when you give someone's brain that choice, their brain immediately, they can't help it, starts deciding which one. And then they're
Just
going to
like
say,
with
a
kids,
woman,
just
a
like
man.
with a kid where you give two choices, you don't say, do you want, you don't give
You
them
want to
like
eat
three
your
choices of things
vegetables.
that you don't want. You give them two choices.
Uh-huh.
Exactly. Give them two choices. Do you want to
Yeah.
eat that? you want to eat this vegetable or that vegetable? Or do you want to eat that now, or do you want to eat it with your lunch or whatever? So then you're giving
Exactly.
two choices that, are acceptable to you,
Mhm.
but they're getting that power to make that choice.
Mhm.
So I can see how that is also positive for the rest of us,
Mhm.
redirecting it to a positive two choices. And then now I'm empowered to make a choice. You're not telling me that I have to do this one thing. Like there's not one choice and I don't want that one. I
Right.
turn it,
Would
then the
this you
response
think
is to
this kind of
like,
thing would be better or that kind of thing would be better? Because if you say, especially something like, "Do you wanna go counseling?" Or, like, heaven forbid if you say, like, "Do you think you need to go to treatment?" That's the big daddy. It's gonna hit the scared reflex, but if you literally put the choices out there, the reflex is gonna be to decide the choice
and that
before
makes
so it's
sense.
like a bypass of the fear button sometimes.
And as I shared with you, my brother went to rehab twice in the last year and a half he was alive. And because my parents were afraid and they were concerned and they kept bringing that up. And so the second time he went, I took him,
Mhm.
rather than my parents driving him. I took him, and I think
Mhm.
that was less stressful for him. And they had him check in at night, and
Mhm.
of course he was intoxicated when I took him to rehab. And when we got
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
and he told me he wasn't, but as soon as we got there, of course the nurse came out and she immediately knew that she said, where you're going to go from here, we're going to have to put you upstairs in detox. And he goes, I don't want to do detox. And she's like, I know you don't, but and another time I took him to the hospital when he was quite ill a few months before he died. And we're sitting in there, and he'd been there a few times to the emergency room with my parents. And we were sitting there waiting for the doctor to come in, and he would have to go and see, have a lot of fluid on him, and they'd have to get a big syringe and take fluid off his belly. So he was telling me about that, and I was like, oh my gosh, that sounds terrible. And he said, how I knew I was going into detox, or why
Withdrawal
I
or
was
whatever. Mhm.
withdrawal? He said, and I said, no, how did you know? And he said, see that curtain, and it had a kind of a pattern on it. He said that started looking like fish were swimming. And I was
Mhm.
like, oh, wow. Like it's that powerful that he started to basically have a hallucination.
Right,
But he
which
knew
can
it
happen
wasn't
from
real.
alcohol, right, that's right,
Right.
mhm,
But he knew, uh-oh, that I'm in big trouble right now because I'm going into withdrawal and I'm in a
mhm,
hospital. And that he ended up being there that time for 3 days. They
mhm,
detoxed him, and I went to see him, and he was not even awake. Like he couldn't really be even there at that
right,
time. So when I took him to the hospital that next time and he was sharing that with me, that was very powerful and impactful for me to realize like how scary that
yeah,
would be. That was for him, never
mhm,
mind for the rest of us, but he was scared too.
mhm,
And he did tell me, like big talk, as you would say, he would say, I don't want to quit drinking, I like to drink. Well, maybe, but I think he was so stuck then. um, and my doctor said that when somebody is to that advanced stage, all their joints in their body hurt.
mhm.
And when they drink, she said that actually they do feel better initially because
When they
it
drink,
helps
everything feels better, no doubt.
their mind, but also their body, because their
Yeah,
body needs that substance.
mhm,
And so the only way they can feel at baseline is to be under the influence of that substance. So again,
right,
very powerful for me to realize how consuming that was for him, you know?
right. I'm glad you brought up, that concept of when they say, "I like to drink," or "I like to do whatever it is," the addiction, doesn't matter what it is. I think that's a good point because most of them will say it, and the ones that aren't saying it are thinking it. It's a real thing. So the way you might could respond in a situation like that, because I'm sure a lot of people listening have either thought that, heard that, said it, whatever, is you can say, "Yeah, I bet there is a big part of you that does like the drinking. Is there a part of you at all that doesn't like the drinking?"
Uh,
Because there
yeah,
is. And when you ask the question immediately, like I said before, the brain can't help but to start to think about the answer. Um, and so what you don't if somebody says, "I like the drinking," you don't wanna say, "Well, you're killing yourself," you don't wanna do that. What you
right.
wanna say is, "I could
Settle that.
understand," just like what
Yeah,
you're saying, I bet it actually is the only time you get some relief. Validate what they're saying, the true part, and then say, is there any part about it you don't like?
Be
Because
curious.
there is, and they'll tell you. That's how you get that thread on the sweater to pull.
Okay, that curiosity, like be curious when somebody's saying something. Because as an educator, I'm a talker. Talk, talk,
Mhm.
talk, talk, talk. We tend to be very verbal,
Mhm.
and so too much over talking too, like making a comment and not waiting for a response, or as soon as there is a response, like then having a big conversation about it, and then too many words, too much talking, and then the moment is gone because I have filled the space and shut down the other person. Also not
Right.
helpful. And
Right. Yeah.
in terms of my sibling, um, even though in the end he was very ill, and we both knew that he was going to die because the doctor had told him, he would still lie to me about being under the influence when I knew that he was. I could see the
Right.
alcohol.
He's
I could
dying
see
of
the
alcoholism, but telling you he hasn't been
yeah.
drinking. Right.
He
Right.
said, I said, why are you not honest with me? And he said, because I feel ashamed. I feel humiliated and ashamed because, this is happening.
Mhm.
And wow, like
Mhm.
what a horrible space to be. What a horrible way to feel about yourself, that you can't even be honest with another person that loves you and is
Mhm.
supportive, but still there's a lot of stigma around having addiction. I mean, it's like a dirty word, honestly.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
really is. For a lot of people, that is not a word they want to hear. It's not a word they want to say. They don't want to think about you or about themselves, and it's easier to say somebody else has an addiction than to say you have an addiction. I have no problem saying I have addictive tendencies. I've had an eating disorder. I'm struggling right now. I'm willing to address those things, and I do, but that's about me feeling comfortable in myself. So again, I can't put that on another person. Like, look what I'm doing. I'm taking care of this. Why aren't you doing that or whatever? Because it
Mhm.
isn't about them. It's about me feeling uncomfortable and addressing my own stuff.
Right.
So, you
Right.
know, that shame response, again, that's not helpful to make somebody
Mhm.
feel negative. Not that I'm causing their feelings, but my comment is not helpful for that person if it puts them in a shame space.
Right. And I think I'm so glad you brought up, the idea of like when you get that little seed or that sweater thread, and then you want to say, even, and this is like, it's not the worst thing to do is say, yeah, I understand that. And this happened to me or whatever. But it does pull attention away. And that's a moment like they're giving it to you, like they're just like peeking out. And so if you say, really, wow, how long have you felt that way? What's that like? Wow, like, and then whatever they're giving you, is there any more pieces of that? What if, how did that whatever, just dig. Or you're just asking and they're just handing and handing, because it's not so much about you knowing the information, but them saying it is helping them process change, right? Like them
That,
telling you is the thing. It's not you hearing it. It's them telling you.
and that's a big deal.
Mhm.
Those little moments of time, for that to be said directly, like, yeah, that is
A very
bothering me, or that is
vulnerable
something.
moment, yeah, that they're really showing you something was probably kinda scary, so
I
yeah.
and I Yeah, and I feel afraid at this point, to like say anything almost. But I like the being curious. If I can be in that moment and remember to be curious and ask questions rather than say nothing, or so when can we check back about that? Well, that's not helpful.
Mhm.
That's pressure also. I like that.
Right.
I'll do this and then we can I come back to you in a week and, check back or ask this, or,
Or say, "I'll
you
let you
know,
know tomorrow what I find out," and yeah. So,
exactly.
because then if you make an appointment, if you say, "When can we check back?" Don't do that. Just say, "Hey, I'll let you know Tuesday after dinner. I'll let you know," whatever, because if you don't, then you go through this spiral inside about like, should I bring it back up? Can I bring it back up? Like, am I making it work? So you already set the thing, and the expectation was there. And then when tomorrow after dinner comes or whatever, and then you say, hey, this is what I found out. What do you think? Let them answer, make the decision, move on. And it makes them not feel scared to talk to you about it because they know you're not just going to go, like,
Yeah.
but you're
Like,
pulling in a little step and a little step.
because I've heard you and Kim and name's escaping me right
Campbell.
now. Campbell say, you know, when the person says something to you, don't want to have a big conversation about it, or like maybe you've moved out or you have a kid that has an addiction and they're living outside the house and they call and talk to you. That is not what they want to talk about. Or if they have a little moment of clarity, they do not need a lecture or a whole big conversation with a lot of words, because then that shuts that little moment down. Because again, I'm doing all the talking, or I want to have a big conversation about it now. So that's a whole bunch of pressure. Well, I don't want to talk about something under those conditions. If somebody were talking to me and I had a moment of clarity, I don't then want to lecture or to have a gigantic conversation every time I bring it up.
Right.
So that has been helpful to me. That say what you need to say, or take that information, but don't then want to have a great big conversation. Like I always wanted to talk about
they do
everything.
Unless they do. Sometimes they do. Yeah. And when they throw you that little softball like that, it's kind of like they're saying I do want to talk about it. But you still have to be cool. Act like it's a first date. Yeah, you're cute, but not too much. You know what I mean? Just feel like. And then so you can say, you can ask questions, and if you just watch their body language and their tone, you
Definitely.
can tell when they're done talking about it. And you can tell sometimes they do want, and it is okay to ask them questions as long as you're getting the feeling that they want to share about it. What you don't want to do is you just don't want to like talk at them. You don't want to push too hard. You do want to push a little. It's hard. It's like a balance.
Yeah. I once was saying something, and my husband said, that's really offensive. Like I'm saying what I know you need to take care of. That's really, and I thought, oh, I could see how that would be offensive. You're a grown man and I am not your boss, and I am not your mommy, and I'm not in charge of you. And, nobody needs another person to be like telling them what they need to do to manage themselves. You're an adult. I trust that you know how to manage yourself and that you know what your own issues are. We're our own worst critic. So I've tried to, through the invisible intervention, I tried to go back into being his partner and his friend and his lover, not the person that's always like all stressed out and bringing up all the bad things. And, because I got into that space, as I was sharing with you, I was so hyper focused on him and so obsessed with trying to fix it. And I can't fix it. That's not my place to fix it. I can be positive and responsive and encouraging, but always being focused on wanting to fix something, that's not a good place for me to get to either.
Right. It's not healthy for you, and it slows the process down, really.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That not healthy for me piece, I think, is part of what Kim helped me to realize, that you're so focused on that, but what about you and you having a positive life? Like, what is your plan? Like, how are you taking care of yourself? And, what fun things are you doing for yourself? And that feels a lot better to me, to be focused on myself, because this is something I can do something about.
Right.
Me having a different interaction, and because I have been able to back off, I still screw up a lot, but I try to be, more myself as much as possible, and that has decreased a lot of the tension. And so we've had a lot more positive times together, now that I'm not always in that role of being focused on what he's doing, or being cranky because I'm stressed out about, my overall life situation, and that gets other things get piled on top of that. And, now that I've been able to set some of that aside and stay in my own lane as much as possible, the relationship improved.
Right. And the more, I love that what you and Kim were talking about, because the more you take care of you, the less angry you get at him. not just because you're not focused on it, but because your needs are being met. And what happens is when you're so focused on them, none of your needs are being met, and then you're just even madder at them because you're like, "You're ruining my life," because
Exactly.
like you're suffering, and
And
so
sometimes I've learned that sometimes your needs can be met outside the relationship. Like, if I need to talk about something that would cause conflict for us, I can talk about that in counseling, or I can talk to a friend. Everything that all my needs don't need to be met by my primary partner. That is
right.
unreasonable that I would expect that person would meet all my needs.
Yeah, that's good advice no matter. That's good
Yeah,
advice for any
exactly.
couple, right? That's good advice. Y'all listen to Serenity. Yeah, she's got it. Yeah, that's
Yes,
right.
it's so
Everybody will be happier.
exactly. So
Yeah.
I'm so very grateful that I found you on YouTube just randomly. And that I've continued to stay connected and watched your videos and the invisible intervention. And it's so just when I get off track, then I'll go find a video to watch, and that will remind me, right back here,
Uh-huh.
get right back here.
Right, yeah.
And yeah, I'm so grateful to have our relationship improve because, you know, we have a good marriage. A lot of our relationship is wonderful, and
Mhm,
we've been together for over 20 years, and
mhm,
we both like to travel. We like to just get in the car and drive to the beach, or so those things have started to reoccur. And so I feel so much more positive, and I can see that he feels more positive, and there's so much less tension in the
mhm,
household.
mhm,
So because when I'm, in that anxious state all the time, of course that impacts him. How could it not?
mhm,
It impacts my other relationships too, because I'm stressed out. I'm trying to do something
mhm.
with, say, my daughter or something, and like I'm already stressed out when I go to the activity, and I can't even enjoy what I'm doing because I'm so upset about stuff. That's not helpful for me
Right.
or for my partner or for the other people that I'm, doing something else with, because in my head I'm stuck somewhere else. I'm not even
Right. Not
present
even
with,
present. Right, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I gotta
So
tell you, your humility and honesty and vulnerability is quite impressive. Um, it really is. Behind the
thank
scenes,
you.
when Campbell and Kim and I talk, when we're just being people and talking, we always say this, when parents first come to Campbell, they're so desperate. I mean, they're just desperate. When spouses first come to Kim, they are angry.
Angry.
Angry. There's so many Kim's like, "These they scare me. They're so angry," usually. And when I
Yeah.
first get clients, they're like, "What am I doing here? Hear you." They're just like, you know.
Yeah.
So for you to come in just so, humble and willing to look at yourself, I mean, that's really quite impressive. And I get the impression it's not just from what you've learned here. I get the impression that it's sort of natural to you as a person. A
And
little
I
bit, yeah.
and I've done a lot of work. I mean, I've
Mhm.
been in and out of
I can
counseling most of
tell,
my
yeah.
life because, I have reasons for that. Um, but and so I'm just a person, I have lots of flaws, and when I can now, I'm not in that anger space all the time because I've been able to back away and say, this again, this is a human being
Mhm.
with feelings and somebody that I love. I don't want to be harming that person with my comments, or so I guess some of my humility comes from just making a lot of mistakes. And, you know, again,
Yeah,
I
but
wish
the
I found the
humility allows you
interdimensional.
to see them, and a lot of people can't
Yeah,
own
exactly.
that. And I think especially spouses, because it's hard because, I mean, there's this feeling of it's not what I signed up for, like, which I totally get. Like, I would I would agree. It's not what I
I
signed up
think
for.
another component is that, like, when it's like a sibling or a parent or something, there isn't an expectation that you're gonna like leave or make that person do something, or I this is another human being with their own desires and needs, and um their own self-reflection and their own inner critic.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm nothing that I'm going to do is going to change that. Like me leaving or me getting angry with the other person. That's just not going to do anything that's productive. Um, I know, probably kind of got off my topic there, but
That's all
just,
right.
being, just hearing over and over. Um, I wish I'd found the intervention so much sooner, because it has helped me so much to get refocused and do a better job caring for myself. Because
Mm-hmm.
I can't do a good job in my relationship if I'm not healthy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not taking care of my own stress. I'm not taking medication like I'm supposed to. I'm not getting enough sleep. I'm not eating healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm doing all these negative things, and then I'm saying you need to fix this or that. Well,
Mm-hmm.
no, I need to like take care of my own stuff and get my needs met, take care of my health, take care of my diet and all that. And that puts me in a better space regardless of what happens.
Exactly. Yeah.
I feel better,
Mm-hmm.
and so yeah, I just feel like a lot of my humility, which I appreciate you saying that. I don't know if I would use that word, but yes, I guess that is what it
No, yeah,
is
like,
from
yeah.
so
You have
much
really good
learning.
insight and humility. Like, even when you said that your husband told you that was offensive, most of us, if we got told that, would just be up in arms. But I mean, I can tell from you telling me the story, you stopped to think about it and you're like, I guess that was. So
I
that
feel
ability to stop
I,
and hear feedback is amazing. So,
I felt grateful that he said that. Like,
mhm,
oh my gosh. I didn't
mhm,
even think about how offensive that'd be. But when he said that, I did immediately go into self reflection like, oh, yeah, that is not okay for me to be saying that. But in that moment, I was like, and then
mhm,
he gave me that real, and he was upset when he said it, but it really like stopped me right in my tracks. Like, oh, yeah, who am I? What am I doing?
mhm.
I don't want to make you feel bad. That wasn't my
Right.
intention. I mean, I was frustrated and I wanted something different.
Mhm.
But again, the other person knows what their own struggles are and don't need it to be pointed out
Right.
over and over again.
They're so much closer to the surface than you think. They always are.
Oh,
They know. It's just like we know our own flaws. We just don't like to talk about them. Like,
exactly.
yeah,
And
it's a human thing. Yeah.
sometimes I feel pressured to, like, I'm supposed to do something about, someone else's behavior. No,
Mhm.
I can't do anything about another person's behavior. I cannot make my spouse do something. You can't make anybody do anything. You can try to intimidate them or manipulate them, but you can't make somebody do something.
Yeah.
And that
Right.
has been helpful too. Like, the whole invisible intervention and staying out of the bad guy role. That's partly for me that framed that
Mhm.
to, be positive and respond to those positive things. And I'm working on that, responding to the change talk in a way that's helpful rather than I go into like fear mode when he says something. I'm like, I feel relieved and hopeful, but I feel scared to say anything because I don't want to.
'Cause you don't wanna mess it up. Yeah, you're like,
I don't want to mess it up.
yeah. I feel that way
Exactly.
sometimes in the session too. I'm like, when they finally say it, you're just like, "Now what do I do?"
Had
You
a
just
lot of
kinda, like,
those
go
moments.
blank.
I'm realized, yeah, exactly. I'm having a lot of those. I'm realizing that we've had a lot of those moments in the last year,
Mhm.
whereas we had none of those for a very long time because
Yeah, I
that
can
was just
tell you've
something.
just in my conversation with you, I'm like, actually, you are getting like a lot
Yeah,
of those little moments, and 'cause those moments don't necessarily look like, "I think you need to take me to 90 days of treatment." They look like they're sort of smaller, They're more
yeah,
like, "This really is causing a problem. I'm sorry how that happened yesterday. I'm gonna do better. I probably should cut it back." I mean, it's like little or even like, "I feel really embarrassed about what happened last night." That's a change talk, like, it's just that little opening up, and when you can sort of recognize it and see, "Okay, there it is," But it is
That's
hard because
huge.
you got to be cool. And if you can't think of what to do, doing nothing is better than
Exactly.
literally
Yes.
like, yeah.
Just
Yeah, if
let
you
it go.
freeze, yeah, it's okay because you get another one. Just sit with it if you're not sure.
And
Mhm.
I used to think that, okay, well, if something happened yesterday, just whatever, doesn't have to be even related to addiction. Like we had an argument or something. I would want to like talk about everything. Like, oh, this
Mhm.
happened. Now I want to have a big discussion to like fix it. Like,
Mhm.
and I've learned that everything doesn't need to be talked about. A lot of it just, let it go. Be a goldfish, 5-second memory or whatever. Like, let it go. It was yesterday, or live in
Yeah.
today. Be
Yeah.
mindful. Be present in
Mhm.
today, and quit worrying about what happened yesterday. And that has been helpful too, to realize that there are a lot of things that don't need to be said or that don't need to have a big discussion. They're over. We both know it was an issue. Not talking about
Yeah.
having a big conversation isn't going to change that. What
Yeah, that
happened isn't going to
feeling of we
fix
need to
it.
talk about it is really we need to talk about it so you can tell me you agree with me and I can feel better. That's what that really is, right?
That's a good point. Yes,
Really,
exactly.
like, if we really dig down, it's like, we need to talk about it so I can give you more points and convince you why I'm right and you can admit it and we can move on. Like,
See,
that's
you're good at that, like framing those things,
yeah.
and because of the way you frame a lot of things, I've been able to accept, like, oh, yeah, okay, I don't need to say anything, or I can say one thing and then walk away. I don't need to wait and wait for a response and, have a big conversation about it, because doesn't doesn't increase the communication about it. It stops it. Like,
Right.
it made like in the tracks, over, stop.
Yeah,
We're not talking about
slam
that.
door. Yes, that's exactly right, yeah.
Exactly. And when I do a lot of talking, I'm a really fast processor. I have ADHD, and my mind's going like a million miles all. And my husband's a lot more like, you know, like when he talks, he'll like pause, and then I would jump in and say something, and he'd say, "Well, you're not listening to me," because I didn't even let him finish the whole thing, and I'm already like
Mhm.
in there making a comment, or making a judgment about this or that, or
Mhm.
giving directions, or
Mhm.
so I'm learning to like slow it down a little bit, and to set some boundaries. Like, people would say, "You don't have good boundaries." I don't know what that means. People have been saying that to me most of my life. And
Mhm.
I learned in the last year or two, between you and my counselor, oh, a boundary is something that you set for yourself
Mhm.
with each person in each
Mhm.
situation. It's not like, if you do this, then you're going to have to do that. Again, I can't make another person do something. So I would say, I don't know what that means, set a boundary. Like, is there like a template or some steps? Like, tell me what they are and I'll do them. And,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
oh, it's not a thing. There's not like a way to do it. It's what, if that happens, I am going to leave the house, or I'm going to go upstairs and work on my computer. I'm going to go watch television because I don't want to be in the conflict.
Mhm.
Um, so very powerful, that reframing and understanding in that moment. Move on.
Boundaries are hard, yeah.
That they are hard,
They're
and
hard, yeah. They are.
yeah,
Hard for me
when
too.
you don't learn that as a kid, and my parents are my dad and my stepmother. My biological mother, well, I haven't talked to her in over a year, for one thing, but I always was always trying to fix that, because I felt sorry for my mom. But
Mhm.
then I realized that the person I should have felt sorry for was myself and my brother, not
Yeah,
her.
right.
Um, and so I didn't learn boundaries because we weren't talked to. We weren't asked how we felt about things. Like, we moved a million times and we were just told, that we're moving again. So, which means
Mhm.
I'm changing schools for the, 10th, 15th time. So I didn't know how to get my own needs met. I didn't know how to say, I don't want to do that. I didn't know how to identify my own feelings, because I was never encouraged
Allowed.
to do that.
Yeah, you weren't allowed to do that, yeah.
And then when I was 13 or 14, I came to live with my dad and my stepmother, who treated me completely differently than I had been treated before. And they would ask me, well, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? And they talked to me about going to college. And I was like terrified, like, nobody had ever talked to me about going to college before. I thought I was just going to grow up and get married and have kids and be a secretary like my biological mother. Like I was never talked about like what you might want to do as an adult, like none of that. So when I was in adult relationships, I didn't know how to say, I don't want to do that, or
Right.
I feel scared, or I feel apprehensive about trying that, or whatever. I would say none of those things. I would just go along with whatever it was. And so I've had to learn the boundary thing because I didn't know how to do it. And I'm not saying I'm good at it now. I'm saying I'm learning, and I'm getting more calm about it, and understanding that the boundary is for myself and not to make the other person do something has also empowered me that it's okay for me to walk away. It's okay for me to not say that. It's okay for me not to give a suggestion about what you might need to do. I can just take care of me. This is a stressful situation. So I am learning to say, you know what, this is not a good time. I don't want to talk about that right now. It's nighttime. I'm tired. This is not a good time. We've already agreed that nighttime's not a time for us to have a productive conversation. And so I've been able in the last 6 months or so to say, you know what, I'm getting very escalated, and this is not a good time for me to be having this conversation. And then to stop it. Like, if he continues to talk about it, I'll just get up and leave the room. I said, I've already said I don't want to talk about this. I'm happy to talk about it tomorrow. You know, so that has also been very powerful for me, that I don't have to stay here and keep saying the same thing or be in this conflict with you. I can stop it. Again, changing my behavior changes the dynamic of the relationship, changes the dynamic of the conflict. So yeah, taking care of myself. Again, that's staying in my own lane. You know what? Here's my boundary for me. I'm going to get up and leave the room now because I'm feeling uncomfortable and I don't want to say something hurtful or mean. You know, like my husband would tell me, you're mean. Well, I was being mean sometimes. Like the things that I would say, they're mean. You know, they're judgmental and mean. And then I feel shitty about myself. Sorry. I feel crappy about myself because I'm hurting someone that I love. And that hurts me too. So the boundaries, I now understand, are very powerful and very important to have, so that I would feel victimized almost when I couldn't set a boundary with a person. Because now I'm going to do something I don't really want to do. And I'm not even talking about in the context of my marriage. I'm talking about just in general. I would do things for other people that I really didn't want to do, but I didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings, or I don't want to let somebody down, or, you know, so I was doing way too many things for everybody else and not taking care of myself. So, yeah.
Preach it, sister. I like it.
I'm trying not to preach.
Well, you're giving us good advice, so I'll let it happen. I like it.
I'm not trying not to be preachy in my relationships with people, because and another component of that is like listening and being curious. So when my kids come to me, I have told my kids, if I start going into lecture mode, just say, hey, Mom, I just need you to listen. Because I would go into like fix it mode immediately with that. My ask me something, they're having a problem, and I'd immediately be out there like trying to fix it. And, you know, Holly once said to me, Mom, I'm not asking you to fix it. Oh, you're not asking me to fix it. Okay. So being curious.
You need to listen, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Tell me, assume that I have a solution for themselves.
Right.
They're aware of whatever.
Most people already do have the solution for themselves. They're just trying to work up the courage to do it.
Exactly. So me to, because they're competent, capable people. My husband's a person. My kids are smart. You know, they don't need to fix it.
Right.
Again, back to me. Again. Yeah.
I think I've kept you over time already. I think we're about to run out of time, but I just want to give you my sincere thank you so very much for being so open and sharing with us, because I know I related to everything you were saying. So I know there are other people out there that I'm just over here shaking my head, and I know that there are people watching doing the same thing.
I mean, if I helped one person with anything I said, I'm glad for that.
No, you're helping us all.
And me to share also, because that makes me aware of,
Right.
sharing the story. I think that is a whole thing. What I shared with the people that had an eating disorder, that freed me up to be able to talk about it. Like, that took some of this, said it out loud. It became easier and easier
Yeah.
to talk about it, and then that made me open to being more assertive about getting help for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because I it lives in secrecy, and when I have
That's
an eating
right.
disorder, I understand that secrecy because I felt painful that I had an eating disorder. I didn't want people to know that
Mm-hmm.
I was, and I was obsessed. My mind was obsessed with, so that
Mm-hmm.
understanding that is also
Right.
situations with people that, getting it out there is so important. Getting rid of
Yeah.
that secrecy part of it.
Right.
I think that's been helpful in my relationship, that we've had those moments that it's not a secret. Talk
Mm-hmm.
about once in a while. That
Yep.
doesn't mean to be big. But
If
and if any of that was helpful,
right. If you guys let Serenity know in the comments or chats if anything she said resonated with you, or give a like or a thumbs up, so Serenity knows that you're out there, you're listening, and you hear her. And I will see you guys again next Thursday, every Thursday at 1 Eastern. I'll see you soon. Bye, everybody.